Guess we'll get going then. All right, well, welcome everybody. Welcome to Confirmation for those of you who are tuning in virtually and for those of you who are here. I'm Pastor Nate. You might not have seen or met me before. Some of you have. But I'm the new pastor here, and I get to be in charge of CYF ministry. So you're going to be seeing a whole bunch of me. I'm going to take this off while I'm talking up here. So I get to teach confirmation tonight, which I'm really excited about. Obviously, I haven't done that here before, but I have to just warn you that my style of teaching confirmation is probably a little bit different than you've experienced before. I hung out over there and watched Pastor Jason teach last week. How many of y'all were tuned in online for that? Sweet. I love how Jason does it. That man is so smart. Anybody think he's just wicked smart? Yeah, he's like overwhelmingly smart. I'm not that smart, so I don't teach that way. The way I teach is this. I like to talk. And so I'm going to talk to you, and this can go one of two ways. If you talk back to me, like if you answer questions and stuff, then this is going to be easy, right? But if you stare at me like I'm from Mars, then this is going to be super painful, and nobody wants that. So I'm hoping that when I ask you a question, you'll actually kind of answer it, whether or not it's wrong. I'll be honest with you, I don't care if you give me wrong answers. I prefer a wrong answer over a no answer, okay? So even if you don't know what's going on, if you barely know where you are, you still should probably answer a question, and it's going to be fine. Cool? If you don't know an answer, oftentimes I'll give it to you anyways, just because. Why not? So that's a little bit about me. You guys will probably get used to me. I don't know, in a while. Who knows? But like I said, I haven't really been here before. I've seen one confirmation lesson done. So can someone tell me anything, any one thing that you have learned about this year? And please, for the love of God, somebody answer this question. Right? One thing you've learned about what? The 10 Commandments. Can anyone name one of the 10 Commandments? And if you say 7, I'm going to throw something at you. What? Never. Were you going to say 7? All right. What it? Honor your mother and father. Great. Okay. That's one of the 10 Commandments. Can anyone tell me something that's not a 10 Commandment that you've learned about this year? All right, we've got 10 Commandments down then, right? I mean, that's something. All right, what did we talk about last week? I'll give you you can give me the really broad answer if you want. Generally, Jesus' parables. That was even more specific than I was going to take. If somebody said Jesus, I was going to be really happy. So, great. So Jesus' parables, right? Can somebody tell me a little bit about Jesus? Who was Jesus? What did he do? What do you know about Jesus? Shoot, dude, you want to teach? Right? All right, so he is a baby born in Bethlehem, right? Grew up, we had the whole crucifixion thing, died on the third day he rose again. Sweet. Can anyone tell me anything else about Jesus? Anything else you know about Jesus at all? He walked on water, right? So there's miracles in there. He healed people. Anyone know one of the healings? What's one of the healings? What? Leprosy, right? He healed leprosy. That's pretty awesome. Did you throw that back at me? He's aiming at me, actually. Oh boy, I've started something here, I think. All right, what's another thing you know about Jesus? Anything you know about Jesus? That he made a blind person see. He made a blind person see, right? Does anyone have a favorite miracle that he did? What do you got? When he walked on water. You walked on water? Do you ever want to do that? Like, do you go to the pool and you're like, you go to the edge and you're like, man, this would be sweet. Did you ever do that? You should try it sometime. It's pretty awesome. What's up? Yeah, he brought a dead person back to life. That's pretty crazy. On the fourth day, actually. A little thing about that, what's crazy about it is in Jewish belief, you were like, your soul actually left your body on the third day. So by the fourth day, Lazarus was like dead, like super dead, and he brought it back. So a little trivia for you in case you're ever in Bible trivia, I guess. One more thing. Does anyone know one more thing about Jesus? Anything? Who was his mom? All right, what?
I mean, his mom was Mary, but I was going to say that he was like a rabbi.
Yeah, right? He was a rabbi. He was a teacher. He was a religious leader and authority, right? So that's important stuff. All right, so I'm going to have you watch this little video just to give you the broad scope, again, of the story, supposedly from the beginning of Genesis, right, to kind of Jesus' life. So this is going to be a review for y'all, which is a good thing because that's what it's intended to be. But I want you to watch this and just kind of feel what connects with you in this. Cool? Give me 2 thumbs up if you're still listening. Sweet. I got most of them. That was like 80%. We'll take that.
In the beginning, God created the universe and a planet called Earth. Humans were formed in God's image to continue God's work. But soon, humans decided we want to live our way, not God's. Selfishness and violence filled the world, so God started over with just one family. And God made a covenant with a man named Abraham. The land around you is now yours. Your family will be my blessing to the entire world. In just a few generations, they grew into a large nation named Israel. The Egyptians became fearful and forced the Israelites to be their slaves. Through a humble leader named Moses, God led the Israelites in a great exodus back toward their promised land. Along the journey, God gave laws and commands to help the Israelites follow God's ways. Finally, after 40 years of struggle and complaining in the desert, the Israelites arrived back home in the promised land. In victory, the people worshipped God, but soon after, they turned from God and lived their own rebellious ways. This became a pattern from generation to generation. Now living back in their promised land, Israel continually struggled to follow God's ways. So Saul became Israel's first king. But he led the country poorly and turned his back on God. So God chose a courageous young man named David to be king. God blessed Israel greatly under David's leadership. David passed on his throne to his son, Solomon, who was full of God's wisdom. Solomon built a magnificent temple. But as the years passed, Solomon strayed from God, and the country was torn apart in civil war. So God sent prophets as messengers to challenge the Israelites to return to God's better ways. But they wouldn't listen. God's people were forced out of the promised land, the temple was destroyed, and many were taken away as slaves. But God was still watching over them, speaking words of hope through the prophets. 60 years later, this hope was realized when the Jewish people were freed to return to their promised land. God's prophets pointed to the future and a coming king, one who would fully restore Israel and bring a new kingdom of peace. So the Jewish people waited and hoped, and God would not speak through the prophets again for 400 years. 400 years passed since God spoke through the prophets. They were now ruled by the Roman Empire, and the Jewish people longed for a Messiah to come and liberate them. Then, Mary, a young woman still a virgin, gave birth to a boy named Jesus, meaning one who saves. Angels announced that he was the Messiah King. Overjoyed, a group of shepherds ran to tell everyone in sight. This birth was truly a miracle. When Jesus grew up, he faced the same temptations as all people, but always chose to follow God's ways. Jesus showed his closest followers, called disciples, how to live in the ways of God. He told them, "The kingdom of God has come. Now turn from your ways to God's ways." Using profound stories called parables, Jesus challenged the Jewish people to search for the deep realities of God's kingdom. As crowds surrounded Jesus everywhere, he felt compassion for them, giving them food, healing their illnesses, and even raising people from the dead. Jesus was a different kind of king than expected. He wasn't a military leader. Instead, he led through compassion, justice, and loving those who were forgotten.
All right, was that vaguely familiar to anybody? Yay, we'll take that. All right, so one of the things that I want you to do, I'm going to start out with this way. So you all have a long, skinny piece of scrap paper, right? I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer this question on your scratch paper. Okay? Now, this is a big question. It's kind of vague, and I'm not going to give you any more instruction on how to answer it. Got it? Who are you? Go. All right, you got about 30 seconds left. I'm expecting 3-page papers from everybody. Who are you? All right, you got about 5 seconds left, so wrap up your thoughts. Now, first off, is that a hard question? No? Okay. Did anyone find that to be a hard question? Okay. Some of you thought it was pretty easy. All right. So tell me, I don't need specifics, but what type of things did you write on your paper? Okay. So like your school affiliation. Okay. What'd you write? Child of God. Okay. What else? What'd you write? Son of your parents. So we're going to talk about relationships, right? Okay. What'd you get? What? Age. Your age. Okay. What'd you write? Your name. Okay. Is that kind of important? I would think so. Okay. What else? Anybody write down any other kind of things? Here's the thing. Aside from this one, a lot of these are kind of surface things, right? Intrinsically, the question is, who are you inside? Right? Now, child of God, that's a big, huge thing. Okay? But your relationships will change over time. Your school will change over time. This changes all the time, right? What if you're traditionally a woman and you get married? Right? So this can change. So if you have all of those things that change, the question is, who are you? Deep down inside, who are you really? Okay. Things like loyalty, right? Helpful. Do you think those are important? Yeah, those are important attributes. Now, does anyone actually know you completely? Does anyone in your life know every single side of you, every little piece of you? But do they know everything about you? Really? Does anybody else have anyone in their life that knows absolutely everything about them? Every thought that goes through your head, every thing you have experienced, everything? God does, right? God does. But human relationships, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you spill your guts, you cannot be known completely, right? A lot of times when I do this and people write down stuff, they write down things that they do. Did anybody write down that they're a basketball player or a hockey player or, right? Right? Baseball stuff. So all of that can change those. So that is not who you are. That's what you do. Right? A lot of these can actually be what you do and not who you are. One of my points with this is this. We are supposed to have this personal relationship with Jesus. Right? Yeah, everyone hear that? We're supposed to know Jesus. We're supposed to have this great relationship with Jesus. He's supposed to be in our lives. Right? How do you do that? How do you do that when you don't actually get to talk and interact with Jesus that much? Right? That's difficult. If these things are not who you are, if the things that you do, like you're a baseball manager, if that's not who you are, then how is somebody supposed to get to know exactly who you are? And it gets further complicated with Jesus, right? Because Jesus isn't standing here in this room. All we have are stories about Jesus. What do you got? Maybe like praying. Yeah, right? That's one of them. But I don't want to deny the fact that this faith thing is hard. It's really hard. It's harder than a lot of normal relationships that you're going to have because you can't just sit there and have a back and forth conversation with Jesus. So this is hard stuff, right? Anyone struggle with this whole faith thing? I do. Yeah, it's difficult stuff, right? Because you're supposed to know Jesus. He's supposed to be the central piece of this for you. And you're supposed to build this relationship with Jesus, but it's hard to actually even get to know Him. But that's where you're going to start tonight. As you go into your groups, you're going to start to talk about who Jesus actually is. What is His core identity? Okay? And unfortunately, all you've got to go on is the things that He does, is the stories that we have. That's going to be your starting spot. But you have to start to get to know who Jesus is, right? In things like this: loyalty, helpfulness, love, care, all of the forgiveness. You have to start to get to know who Jesus is on that level so that you can understand how He would actually be interacting with you today. Does that make sense? But the vehicle to learn these sorts of things about Jesus are the stories that we have about Him and the way that He interacted with other people. Because the way that He interacted with other people can be the same way that He does interact with us. That's hard. We are asking you to do hard work tonight to learn about who Jesus is. I'm not going to shy away from that. This is hard. You're going to struggle. You're going to wrestle. There are going to be things that don't make sense. And that's okay. But your job tonight is to dig as much as you can to try to figure out not just what Jesus does, but who He actually is. Because who He actually is hasn't changed. And that is who's going to be speaking into your life every single day. Does that make sense? Any questions, comments, or snide remarks? Somebody's got to have one. Wow, y'all are nice. All right. Well, that's all. Let's see. I can play this little video for y'all. All right. So here's this little video for you.
Because of what Jesus said and did, people wondered who Jesus was. His followers said to him, "Some people say you are John the Baptist come back to life. Some say you are Elijah, or one of the other prophets." "What about you?" Jesus asked. "Who do you say that I am?" Jesus' follower Peter spoke up. "You are the Messiah." But Jesus told them not to tell anyone yet. 6 days later, Jesus took Peter and two of the other disciples, James and John, high up on a mountain. When they got to the top, Jesus' appearance suddenly changed. His face shined like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light. Two men appeared next to him. They were Moses and Elijah. Then a voice came from the clouds, "This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him." The disciples fell down terrified. When they got up and opened their eyes, only Jesus remained. From there, Jesus and his followers traveled to Jerusalem for a huge festival. Jesus went to the temple to share some of his thoughts with the crowd. There, the religious leaders became very angry at what Jesus was teaching. They knew he was claiming that he was the Messiah, the king they'd been waiting for. Enraged, they picked up stones to kill Jesus, but he managed to escape. After leaving Jerusalem, Jesus continued to teach and perform miracles. He heard that one of his good friends, Lazarus, was sick. So Jesus and the disciples traveled to where he lived. When they arrived, they discovered that Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. Jesus went to the tomb where Lazarus was buried, had the stone rolled away, and raised him from the dead. Soon it was time to go back again to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. Two of his followers brought Jesus a mule to ride on as he came into the city. When he did, huge crowds gathered along the streets, shouting, "Hosanna! Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord!" The crowds loved Jesus, but it didn't take long before he began clashing with the religious leaders again. He exposed their corruption and threatened their authority. So the leaders began devising a plan to get Jesus arrested. They met with Judas, one of Jesus' followers, who agreed to turn Jesus in to the authorities in exchange for some money. Then, the religious leaders waited for the right opportunity to arrest him.
All right, so again, this is hard work you're going to have to do tonight to start to learn who Jesus is by what he did. Got it? All right. Y'all are dismissed. Julie, you want to